There is a moment, a single, suspended moment, where time slows down, where the noise of an entire arena fades into background static, where thousands of people disappear and there is only you and the person standing in front of you and something you never fully prepared yourself to feel. That moment happened on May 25th, 2026, at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. And the person who caused it wasn't a lover, wasn't a childhood hero from a distance, wasn't some abstract dream. It was ParkJimin, standing right there, trophy in hand, looking directly at her. And SZA, one of the most celebrated, most awarded, most artistically respected women in modern music, completely lost her composure. Not in a bad way, in the most beautifully human way possible. Because sometimes, no matter how many stages you've stood on, no matter how many awards you've already won, no matter how many times you've told yourself you're ready, reality hits different when it's actually happening in front of you. And for SZA, that reality had a name. It had a face. It had a presence. And on that night, it had hands that were literally placing a trophy into hers. Let's rewind. Let's go back to the beginning of that night, because what happened between SZA and Jimin didn't happen in a vacuum. It was the culmination of one of the most extraordinary evenings in recent music award history, and BTS was at the center of all of it. The 2026 American Music Awards opened with a statement. Before a single award was handed out, before a single acceptance speech was delivered, BTS had already announced themselves. Their performance of Hooligan, filmed during their ongoing Arirang World Tour, detonated inside that Las Vegas arena like a controlled explosion. Pre-recorded, yes, but the effect was anything but distant. Blood-red lighting, heavy fog rolling across the stage, razor-sharp choreography that looked like it was pulled from a different dimension entirely, and 7 men who had spent 2 years away from the world, serving their mandatory military duties, returning not with a whisper but with a declaration. The crowd inside MGM Grand Garden Arena erupted. And that eruption didn't stop for the rest of the night. Because BTS weren't just performers that evening. They were nominees. 3 categories, 3 chances. Artist of the Year, Song of the Summer for Swim, Best Male K-pop Artist. 3 nominations that represented the full arc of their comeback, from the Arirang album release earlier this year, to the world tour that has been shattering attendance records across every continent they've touched. But here's the thing about that night that most casual viewers might have missed. Before BTS took home any of their own awards, before RM stood at that mic and told ARMY, "We made it once again," before the group swept every single category they were nominated in, they were presenters first. The producers of the AMA had a very specific assignment in mind for BTS. And it was an assignment that, in retrospect, felt almost poetically designed. Best Female R&B Artist. When that category was announced, and when BTS walked out onto that stage to present it, the energy in the room shifted in a way that was almost visible. 7 men, 7 of the most recognizable human beings on the planet right now, walking in formation, each of them dressed with the kind of intention that only comes from knowing exactly what you represent. And they stood there, together, and they said one name. SZA. Not one of them said it. Not 2. Not a designated spokesperson stepping forward while the others hung back. All 7 of them, in near-perfect unison, announced the winner. And if you've watched that clip even once, and the internet has watched it approximately 10 million times by now, you already know that the energy of that moment was unlike almost anything else that happened that night. It was theatrical. It was warm. It was BTS being completely, unashamedly themselves. A group that operates as one unit even when doing something as simple as reading a name off a card. The crowd reacted instantly, and then SZA walked out. Now, here is where the story gets interesting. Here is where the evening transforms from a great night at an awards show into something that people are going to talk about for years. Because the moment SZA stepped onto that stage, the moment she saw those 7 men standing there waiting for her, something happened to her face that no publicist prepared her for, no stylist could have anticipated, and no amount of industry experience could have prevented. She fangirled. Completely. Visibly. Undeniably fangirled. And then she walked toward Jimin. This is the part of the story that requires you to slow down and actually understand what you're watching, because if you watch it too fast, you might reduce it to a cute celebrity interaction and move on. But it's so much more than that. Jimin was the one holding the trophy. Of all 7 members standing on that stage, it was Jimin who had been designated to physically transfer the award from BTS to its winner. And when SZA approached him, when that gap between them closed, and when his hands extended the trophy toward hers, the entire visual language of that exchange said something that neither of them needed to speak out loud. This was a meeting, not just a handoff, not just a logistical moment in a scripted evening. This was 2 artists from completely different worlds, completely different genres, completely different cultural contexts, meeting in the middle of a stage in Las Vegas and recognizing something in each other that only artists understand. SZA took the trophy from Jimin's hands, and then she bowed. Think about that for a second. SZA bowed, in the middle of the American Music Awards, in front of a room full of industry people and cameras and a worldwide audience. She didn't do a little polite nod. She bowed, with intention, with sincerity, with the kind of respect that doesn't come from protocol. It comes from genuine admiration. And Jimin pulled her into a hug. The other members surrounded her, cheering, directing her toward the microphone, making her feel not like a winner collecting hardware, but like someone who had just been welcomed into something. The room went absolutely insane. And then SZA did something that no one entirely expected. She stopped, right there at the microphone, in front of everyone, with her trophy in her hands and her speech presumably ready somewhere in her head. She stopped, and she turned back to BTS, and she started talking directly to them. "It's so nice to meet you formally in person." 7 words that carried the weight of everything she was feeling. Because embedded in those 7 words is an entire backstory. "It's so nice to meet you," which means she already knew who they were, already had feelings about them, already had some version of them living in her mind before that night. Formally, which means this wasn't the first time she thought about them, or talked about them, or felt some kind of connection to what they represent. In person, which means the version she knew before this night was different from the version standing in front of her now. Smaller somehow, more distant, more concept than reality. And now they were real. Jimin was real. His hands had just touched hers. The trophy he'd been holding was now her trophy. She wasn't done. It's crazy that this is the moment. So I had to take this moment to just let this be the moment. Read that twice. Read it a 3rd time. Because there is a particular kind of emotional intelligence in those words that deserves to be acknowledged. SZA wasn't stumbling. She wasn't incoherent. She was being deeply, precisely honest about the experience of being overwhelmed by something you didn't quite expect to hit you the way it did. She was telling BTS, telling Jimin, really, since he was the one she just had that physical exchange with, that she was choosing to be fully present in this unexpected feeling rather than rushing past it to get to the rehearsed part of her speech. She was letting the moment be exactly what it was. And what it was extraordinary. Now let's talk about why this matters beyond the surface-level viral clip energy. Because the internet has already made this moment into content, into memes and reaction videos and fan edits, and all of the things that happen when something unexpected and emotionally resonant unfolds in front of cameras. That's fine. That's the world we live in. But underneath all of that, there is something genuinely significant happening in this story. SZA is not a newcomer. She is not someone who gets starstruck easily or often. This is a woman who has navigated one of the most complicated, most artistically demanding careers in contemporary R&B. Who released SOS, an album that V himself told his members he genuinely loves, that he was talking about in the car with J-Hope just hours after that AMA ceremony. Who has stood on her own stages, accepted her own awards, operated at the absolute summit of her industry for years. And yet, Jimin handed her a trophy and she forgot her speech. That says something. Not about weakness, about depth, about the way that certain people, certain artists, carry a frequency that bypasses your defenses entirely. BTS, as a group, has always operated on that frequency. It's a significant part of why they've remained culturally dominant across language barriers and genre lines and generational divides for over a decade. But Jimin, specifically, has a quality in his presence that artists and non-artists alike consistently describe as something they didn't anticipate. There's a reason he was the one holding the trophy that night. Whether that was a production decision or a coincidence doesn't particularly matter. What matters is the image. What matters is the moment. Jimin's hands, SCA's hands, the trophy passing between them like something more significant than a piece of hardware. And on the other side of that exchange, BTS was in the middle of the greatest single night they'd had at an American awards show in years. After they presented SCA's award, they went back to their seats. And then they were called back to the stage again. And again. Because the night wasn't finished giving to them Artist of the Year. The first time since 2021. After 2 years of military service, after a hiatus that some corners of the music world quietly wondered might be permanent, after a comeback that had to rebuild from zero in a landscape that had shifted enormously while they were away, BTS stood on that stage in Las Vegas and claimed one of the most competitive categories in American music. Fan voted, won on the strength of ARMY mobilizing with the same energy they've always carried. RM looked out into that arena and said, "Armies, we made it once again." And there was something in the tremor of that sentence that made it clear he wasn't just talking about the award. Song of the Summer for Swim. A song that had already hit #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in April, that had already become the sonic identity of the early part of 2026, now officially declared the defining track of the season by one of music's most watched award shows. Best Male K-Pop Artist. Almost a formality at this point, given everything else. But formalities still matter when they come with a trophy in your hands. 3 for 3. Not a single loss. And all of this happening on the same night that Jimin made SZA forget she had a speech prepared. There's a footnote to the story that arrived later that same evening on Weverse, and it adds a layer to the narrative that feels almost too perfectly constructed to be accidental. V was on a Weverse live session, the Keep Swimming anniversary celebration, and he mentioned SZA unprompted. He said he really loves SZA, that he was talking to J-Hope about it in the car, that he genuinely loves the SOS album. Casual delivery. The way V always delivers things that are actually quite significant. But the fans caught it immediately, because now you have the full picture. This wasn't just a presenter-winner exchange that happened to go viral because SZA had a sweet reaction. This is a genuine moment of artistic mutual recognition. BTS knows who SZA is. They've listened to her work. V has been playing SOS in the car with his members and talking about how much he loves it. And SZA walked onto that stage already carrying feelings about BTS that she hadn't been able to express in person yet, until Jimin put a trophy in her hands and gave her that opportunity. The community of people who love both of these artists, the fans who have been screaming about a potential SZA and BTS collaboration in comment sections for the past 18 months, erupted when V's Weverse comment surfaced. Because it confirms what the meme already suggested. These aren't two worlds accidentally colliding. These are two worlds that have been orbiting each other, and that night in Las Vegas is when they finally touched. Let's talk about what this moment represents culturally, because I think it deserves that conversation. When BTS first started performing at American award shows, the narrative was largely about novelty. The K-pop group crossing over, the language barrier, the curiosity factor. And BTS handled all of that with extraordinary grace and strategic intelligence, building their American presence methodically and genuinely rather than chasing it desperately. But what happened at the 2026 AMAs is something categorically different. BTS aren't crossing over anymore. They're the show. They opened the ceremony with a performance that set the temperature for the entire evening. They won the night's most prestigious categories. And then, in the middle of all of that, one of America's most respected artists received a trophy from Jimin's hands and stopped her entire speech to tell him that meeting him was the moment she needed to mark. That's not a crossover story. That's a story about dominance, about respect, about the complete and total integration of BTS into the fabric of American music culture at the highest possible level. And SCA's reaction was, in a strange and beautiful way, the most powerful expression of that integration possible. Because SZA is not someone you easily impress. She's seen everything. She's worked with everyone. She exists at a level where novelty is hard to come by. And she fangirled, openly, gratefully, without a single visible trace of embarrassment. Because some moments deserve that response. Some moments are exactly as big as they feel. There's a specific quality to the way Jimin handles moments like this that is worth examining on its own, separate from the broader BTS narrative. Because across the course of their career, across thousands of fan interactions and hundreds of award show appearances and countless exchanges with fellow artists and industry figures, a pattern emerges around him. People feel seen by Jimin, even in brief interactions, even in moments that are logistically simple. Here is a trophy, here is a hug, here is a smile. There is a quality of presence in him that makes the person on the receiving end feel like the exchange is specifically, personally, intentionally meant for them. Not performed, not manufactured, just present. SZA bowed because of that quality. She paused her speech because of that quality. She stood at that microphone and told a room full of thousands of people that she needed to let the moment be exactly what it was, because the moment was shaped significantly by that quality. And ARMY has known about this for years. They've watched it happen in fan meetings and behind-the-scenes footage and live performances where Jimin spots someone in the crowd who needs to be seen and holds that contact for just a beat longer than anyone else would. It is one of the things that makes him irreplaceable, not just as a performer, but as a human presence in any room he enters. On that AMA stage, that quality reached across a genre divide and dissolved it entirely. Now, here's the question that the entire internet has been asking since the clips went viral, and it's the question that deserves to be asked directly. What comes next? Because when you have mutual admiration this visible, this documented, this publicly expressed, the natural next question is whether it eventually becomes creative collaboration. Be talking about loving SOS in the car. SZA being genuinely moved by her encounter with these men. Two ecosystems of fans who already overlap significantly, who have already been building the hypothetical set lists and writing the imaginary track lists in their heads for over a year. It would be genuinely extraordinary. SCA's vocal range meeting Jimin's, two of the most technically complex and emotionally rich voices in their respective genres, operating in the same sonic space. The production possibilities alone would set the internet on fire for months before a single second of audio was released. But even if that collaboration never happens, even if what we saw at the AMA is the beginning and the end of the SZA and Jimin story, what we already have is enough to stand on its own. A woman who has built one of the most respected catalogs in contemporary R&B walked onto a stage in Las Vegas, took a trophy from someone's hands, and stopped the entire proceedings to acknowledge that the person who had just handed her that trophy was someone she had been waiting to meet. That doesn't happen every night. That doesn't happen most nights. That happened because Jimin was there, because BTS showed up to that ceremony the way they've been showing up for over a decade, with full presence, full intention, and a quality of human connection that transcends language and genre and every manufactured barrier that the music industry builds between its categories. SZA won Best Female R&B Artist at the 2026 AMAs. She has a shelf full of awards. She will win more. She is at a point in her career where the hardware is almost secondary to the legacy she's building album by album, performance by performance, year by year. But she will remember that night differently from the others. She'll remember it because of what happened before her speech started rather than after. She'll remember the approach to the stage, the 7 men standing there, the one who was holding her trophy. She'll remember the weight of the gold in her hands and the warmth of the hug and the genuine, undisguised, completely human feeling of being in the presence of people you have admired from a distance, finally becoming people you have actually touched. She let that moment be the moment. And for everyone who watched, for ARMY, for SCA's fans, for anyone who happened to have the television on that Sunday night, it absolutely was. From Jimin's hands directly, a trophy, a bow, a hug, and a speech that stopped in its tracks to acknowledge that some moments are too significant to rush past. This is what BTS at their best has always done. Not just win, not just perform, not just collect the hardware and walk off stage, but create these unscripted, unrepeatable moments of genuine human connection that remind everyone watching that the reason this group has lasted, the reason they continue to matter across every barrier the industry tries to build around them, is because they are real. Jimin is real. The presence he carries is real. The effect he has on people is real. SZA felt it. The whole world watched her feel it. And somewhere on Weverse, a few hours later, V was in a car with J-Hope talking about how much he loves the SOS album. And the circle completed itself in the most quietly perfect way imaginable. If you're not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Hit that button. Because this story is just getting started. The Arirang World Tour is still rolling through North America, BTS is in the middle of the biggest chapter of their comeback, and moments like this one are happening constantly, They just don't always get the full conversation they deserve. Make sure you're here for all of it. And if you want to know everything that happened the night BTS swept the AMAs, every award, every speech, every single moment that made Las Vegas feel like it belonged to ARMY for one night, that video is right here. Watch it. You won't regret it. For now, this was the night Jimin handed SZA a trophy and reminded the entire world what it looks like when real artistry recognizes real artistry. Right there on a stage, in front of everyone. No script required,